Hi, I'm Kim Welcome, and Welcome is my real last name. For the last 20 years, I've worked with leading organizations across financial services, hospitality, government, and everything in between, delivering corporate training through my consultancy, which specializes in leadership communication. And over time, my corporate clients started asking me to work with their team members in a more personal and targeted way. And that's how I moved into executive communication coaching, working one on one with leaders on the specific communication behaviors that were costing them influence, recognition, and opportunity. I've worked with men and women, but I keep finding myself drawn to women because what I've discovered is that women, particularly in professional spaces, are navigating something that most men will never. And the communication work alone isn't enough. They need something underneath that. That has become my work, and this channel is where I share it. Welcome to Leadership Communication for Women. This channel is for women who are good at what they do, indispensable but invisible, the one everyone relies on, but their name is never called when it matters. We talk about communication here, not just the skills, the tools, and the frameworks, because identity is what powers everything. And that's the work most people never do. If this conversation is resonating with you, subscribe. You're in the right place. I get a lot of clients who come to me because English is their second language and they want to improve their professional speaking skills. I had this one client, she's Brazilian, and she was convinced that her accent was costing her interviews. Her goal was to land a role with a US company. And on the surface, that made complete sense. She'd been passed over multiple times. The accent felt like the obvious explanation. But let me ask you something. Right now, you may be working alongside an Indian colleague you can barely understand, but their confidence and skill is undeniable, right? And here's why. India has one of the most rigorous education systems in the world. Their population is enormous and the competition is fierce. And the professionals who make it to our companies, they are the cream of the crop and they know it. And they already arrive identifying as being worthy of being here. Now, that is not an accent story. That is an identity story. And after coaching women across multiple languages and backgrounds, out of every 10 clients who come to me believing their accent is the problem, 9 land jobs. 9 out of 10. Accent is rarely the barrier. Good diction, proper pronunciation, good grammar, these are things that the work environment requires. But an accent is not a liability. It's distinctive. This woman is sharp, technical feel, analytical mind. I could tell almost immediately that she was probably outstanding at what she did. She loved her work. She was powered by excellence, and she had never led a team, but she was already paying attention and taking notes on what not to do by watching her manager. And everything she needed was already there. So why wasn't she moving? She had already made up her mind. Portuguese would get in the way. Her English wasn't good enough. But here's the thing. Her English was good enough. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to do the job, lead the team, and communicate with authority. The barrier wasn't the interview room. She carried the barrier in with her. We worked on her English, yes, but more than that, I started pointing out her brilliance. She just couldn't see it yet. And after every session, when she would come back the next time, she would say, Kim, I left feeling so good. You made me feel invincible. That feeling was data. That was her identity shifting. I coached her through 3 rounds of interviews with a Fortune 500 company, 3 levels. And one of the things we worked on specifically was how to answer that question. Tell us a little about yourself, because that question is one that people most hate. And I showed her that she needed to allow her personality to come through, because companies are not just hiring for skills, they're hiring for fit, and fit is identity. She landed that job, her first managerial position with a Fortune 500 company. And here's what makes that remarkable. They're looking for someone with managerial experience. She did not have the title, but after she told me how she was working and what she was doing, I said to her, you're already leading. And I taught her how to talk about herself as an unnamed leader, the one who influenced outcomes without official authority. And she walked into that interview as that woman, and they hired her. You know, a lot of people know me for personal branding. I've discovered through that work that you cannot build a personal brand until you can see yourself clearly. And most of the women that I worked with couldn't do that yet. It wasn't about their accent. It wasn't about being foreign or the only woman or the only woman of color or the youngest at the table. The circumstance was always different. The pattern, however, was always the same. They had either lost who they were or they were still identifying with a version of themselves that no longer existed. And that's what we're really solving for here. Not accent, not polish, not personal branding, but identity. That's the root. And when you fix the root, everything else grows. So, what does the work actually look like? Until recently, I would take my clients through my personal branding process, and every single time, without fail, it led to the same conversation, the same deeper place. I was doing it unconsciously, helping them examine how they label themselves or how they've been labeled by others, their industry or their culture, their family, their own history. And what we discover almost every time was that they were living inside a label that they had outgrown or one that was never theirs to begin with. And the work is simple to describe and profound to do. You identify the label, you examine where it came from, you decide consciously who you are now, and then you step into that. That's identity alignment. And when it happens, communication changes, the presence changes, the room responds differently, not because you learned a new skill, because you stepped into the version of yourself that serves you and the room. Now, as Black women, we are tired, and rightfully so. The workplace has asked us to perform, adapt, absorb, and deliver, all without recognition or reciprocity. And that's real, and I'm not dismissing any of that. But here's what I've also observed: the shield that protects us can also block us. The same wall that we build to shield us from the pain is the same wall that will keep out opportunities. The relationships that could open doors, the allies who don't know how to get close, the rooms that sense the armor before they sense the brilliance. And I'm not asking anyone to be less. I'm asking, is what you're carrying still serving you? Or has it become a habit that costs more than it protects? That's not blame. That's self-authorship. And that's the work. If you watch this and see some of yourself, if you're the woman everyone relies on, but whose name never comes up when it matters, and you know there is so much more to you than meets the eye, I want you to do one thing. Download the Close the Gap assessment. It's free. The link is in the description below. It's not a quiz, it's a mirror. 15 questions that will show you exactly where the gap lives, how you see yourself, the story you're telling yourself, how you show up, and what you're carrying. And most of all, who you're becoming. 5 minutes, and you will know specifically what's standing between the woman you are right now and the woman that they perceive. The link is below. Do the work. I'm Kim Welcome. Communication is the skill. Identity is the power. See you next week.